No. Okay. We're good. Okay. I'm John Lunt. I'm the GM of GSET, Greenfield Community Energy and Technology. You got what we sent you back in November, and I did ask, and Aaron was nice enough. I hope you got this. That was. Maybe you didn't. Okay. I can make copies for you easily. We are seeking a $450,000 grant, bond. And it is for what is called Make Ready. The mayor's familiar with this. Make Ready is required payments for work that's done on the utility poles to prepare them for having another fiber optic or other cable put on. You have to move things around. It's also an opportunity for them to have other people pay to replace poles. It is something that came out of about 5 or 6 years of wrangling back and forth between state governments and large telecom companies. And in the end, the telecom companies were able to get a ruling that said that it is required to sign a contract and adhere to the contract. We have now covered quite a bit with grants, but there are 17 applications, 14 of which were for fiber optic cable that was put up by the first management group back in 2017. And we have to go through and work with Verizon and Eversource, the two owners of the poles, to pay for the Make Ready for those poles because it was not paid when it was first put up. We've also put some up ourselves, but the 17 applications that exist is a big chunk. It's a little more than 85% of all of the fiber optic cable that is up. The issue for us is if we don't work through and pay the Make Ready costs to get the licenses to be in the poles, then we can't be on the poles. And that is pretty much the end of GSET. So we are looking for this because it is something that's really necessary. I wrote that the impact is pretty severe if we don't do it. And the other thing I guess that's being passed around. It is something that it's a bond that we can capably and comfortably handle because next year our overall debt obligations drop by over $123,000. And then they drop at about $12,000 a year after that. There's 1 year that's 17, but that's a smaller bond from earlier that's being paid off. So roughly, and it's just an average, if you say it's anywhere from sort of 12 to 15% of the value of the bond, depending on the coupon and the interest rate and everything that's involved with it, it would be somewhere anywhere from sort of mid-50s to upper 60s as an annual debt service for that bond. For a bond, it would be for resilience of the network, so it would be a 15-year bond. That means with the drop that we're having, because we'll have next year paid off 3 bonds, we would be able, if we were to get this bond, to pay that and still have a significant drop in our overall debt service, which would help our operating, because the overall plan to deal with Make Ready is to seek a bond, but to also use grants. We have grants for other areas that we're moving out into, particularly heading towards Adams Road, going out Wisdom Way in South Greenfield, and then a grant specifically for the Weldon. But we do not have the ability to handle this kind of a large one-time payment purely out of operating, which is really what bonds are and what they're for. So for us, the need is pretty simple. We're very clear that this is something that we could afford to do. And it would allow us to both work with Verizon and Eversource, which we've learned a lot about. We've talked with a lot of other MLPs about how to push back, about how to, because it is a rich source of income for them. And there's not a lot of options for people wanting to go on the polls. But we work with other MLPs and we put together a whole plan about how other MLPs successfully pushed back. So we will be doing that. We do need a bond. We'll be using some of our operating profits to pay towards this, and we will also use grants and operating monies that are freed up by grants too. So it's part of an overall sort of many-pronged strategy to make sure that we can get this taken care of. We've finished, and we finished last year, was the last year. This wasn't the only debt that was left over. We had about $250,000 of retirement pension that didn't get paid, that we finished paying off last year. It was just under $100,000. And so in the last 5 or 6 years, we've retired a lot of the debt that sort of came forward from the first group. But this is really this is the one that is the most difficult. And we have our budgets ready, because obviously they go in next week. Next year, this year, we will be profitable and we will increase our retained earnings. And next year looks to be really, really strong year for us, because we will have access to customers up in the Northfield, because we went out and did poll work on the Northfield today. So we have done a lot of work with potential customers up there, and we feel strongly that we will have some really good uptake up there, which is terrific for our revenues. And if we can have the drop that we're going to have, even with a new bond that we're seeking, plus the new customers, we will really be in a good spot. That doesn't mean we would never need a bond for something else in the future. We have trucks, and just like DPW does, and I'm sure at some point we would come back and say we would like a bond. I doubt they would be as important as this one, because this is really kind of existential for us. And it would let us sort of, really the whole first part of my tenure here has been trying to stabilize GSET and get it big enough that it could operate sustainably, and figure out how to deal with the debt that was left. Because at one point it was like a third of the entire budget. So next year, if we were able to have a bond, that would drop to under 20% of the budget. So we've made a lot of strides, but this is something we need. And it's something that we can pay for, and it would allow us to then look towards what we would need to do to continue to expand. We're busy now. The Northfield is going to keep us busy, and the two grants will keep us busy for a while. So for the next year or so, it's going to take everything we have and working with some outside people just to get that all down. But beyond that, we know there are still areas where people would like us to go, and it's only to our advantage to cover as many people as we can. While we're doing that, we're doing things. We're working with the mayor on the digital equity grant. The Weldon is one that we're feeling really good about, because it's low-income seniors. That is a really important area to push digital equity. So if we can get this point where it isn't something that really occupies a tremendous amount of our time, then it really frees us up to continue to do what our mission is in town. But until we get this paid and until we get this put to bed, it's really hard for us to look that far forward.
And what about the other 15% of you said that you have 17 applications and that's 85% of
The other 15% are, we did do a few new areas ourselves because we felt we knew how many customers we had to get to the point where we would be sustainable. And we knew what our uptake rates over years was in certain areas, and we knew we needed to grow a little bit from where we were. If we hadn't had the 14 out of the 17 to deal with, we probably could have dealt with the whole thing with grants and with operational. But that plus the legacy Make Ready is just more than we can do operationally, because we can't generate enough profit in 1 year to handle a large one-time payment, which is why people seek bonds and why they manage debt, so they can do that and pay it off over time.
So is most of this paying for, I see in some of the description, it's for licenses on areas you already have.
That's what the way.
This is in the majority, and the other part says build out materials and customer premise equipment.
Right. So
Is it freeing up so you can do the forward stuff by not having to work in the past?
yes, once we literally, even with the bond, any retained earnings beyond what we need to do just to grow retained earnings with DOR is going to go to this. It's going to take everything we have, both bond and operating, and grants that we have that are freeing up some money to service this, because it's very expensive and it is something that is unregulated. There's no real opportunity. There are bills in the House and Senate, but there have been for years. So until we get this done, then we really can't look forward as much as we'd like to. Because if we don't get it done, then everything we're doing outside is moot, because we would be off the polls and GSET would be no more.
So I guess for clarification, just for folks who might have questions, is try to put it simply, things were put on polls without proper licensing being
Yes.
paid. This would be paying for those. And then after, I'm assuming after a certain point of finding this out, the subsequent additions have been properly licensed before doing it?
This is what the North Build, it's one of the things that took so long in the North Build, and the North Build is paid for by ARPA. So this is something the mayor is very familiar with. We are doing the licensing before doing the work, because that's how you're supposed to do it.
Right.
We have gotten to the point where, other than, we're down to like a couple of polls where they were supposed to move things and they said they didn't. So we're making sure that they follow up. But yes, from now on, we would go through the Make Ready process, which is time consuming. Every state around us has something called One Touch Make Ready, because that's what the federal licensing guidelines from the FCC says. Massachusetts is one of the, it's about 20, I think, states that opted out and said, no, we're going to do it ourselves. They don't allow One Touch Make Ready here. So Make Ready in Massachusetts, compared to all of the states around us, takes almost 3 times as long and is almost 3 times as expensive. It's just a system that doesn't work right. Yeah, well, so when we do go into a license process, it's not going to happen in a month.
Right.
The average now is 2 years, 2.5 years for licenses to go through, and for big projects, it's closer to 4. So
How long have the units been on the poles that were not licensed?
you're talking about about 5 years. We went to them years ago and
Okay.
said, look, we know that this is something that we have to take care of. We will. We're not going to be able to do it all for you now. And we need you to work with us. And they have, by and large. So we have managed to buy enough time to get to the point where we can be sustainable and address it. But the bill is here, and we really need to pay for it so we can, because once you pay for it one time, it's done. You pay much, much smaller yearly little fees. It's like $9 a pole. That's just something we handle out of operations. It's really the one-time cost, because replacing a telephone pole is now over $4,000. And that's where the sort of fights and pushback come, because we've talked to West Springfield and Shutesbury and Leverett and people all over the state, and figured out there are ways you can push back. Some people have more successfully than others. The makeup of the poles downtown is very different than the poles out in the north. It's actually to our advantage, because they're either much better or much worse. And the ones that are much worse, we can argue if they're replaced for what's called condition, we don't have to pay for it. So deciding what's replaced for condition, according to them, nothing is ever replaced for condition. But there have been enough cases, and we have talked with our delegation or representatives, and we know people in the state, and we've talked a lot with NBI, who has been tremendously helpful at Mass Broadband Institute, who is the manager to the grants that we're working with. And they've helped us a lot too. And we've worked a lot with Division of Local Services to address all sorts of interpretation of how the law should be applied and how it deals with Make Ready. And in the downtown, they've actually on their own replaced quite a few poles, and they did it because they had to upgrade their power transfer capabilities. But if they replace it for that, we don't have to pay for it. And that means it really lowers, and we're certain that we will be able to have a sort of a cost per application that's lower, because we frankly learned with help from our friends how to push back better. And we're getting a little lucky with the nature of how the poles are downtown. It's still a big chunk of money, but there are towns where, Make Ready is coming. Shutesbury ended up having to go back to the state because Make Ready ended up being 3.5 times what the initial estimates were. So it's something you have to be really, really careful about. And if you keep working with people and you insist on doing things in a step-by-step manner, which we have, then there's much less chance you're just going to get snowed under. And there's much more chance that you can say, no, we're not moving on to this because we have questions here. And we've worked with them enough under this system that we can do that. It doesn't mean we can stretch things out forever, but it does, and we would need to have that money from the bond available. But we're feeling a lot better about our ability to push back, because we've just learned as we've gone through this process. And B, really our overwhelming concern in the Northfield was speed, because we wanted to get people hooked up. People in the core are hooked up. So if we're going to take a little longer and go back and forth a little bit and try to have our primary goal be keep those people served while we really push and debate hard about what the cost of Make Ready would be, that's something we couldn't do up north, but we can do here.
How long bond are you thinking about?
15 years.
15 years.
Which in the past, I mean, there's certain language that can certainly help with, that would help with that. In the past, they've all been 2 years of bans and a 13-year buy down the principal with the bond premium. Whatever the payment is depends on what the coupon is and how you want to do it. But I don't control the bans. When you guys go to bond, you go to bond. So we plan just to be conservative that you go to bonding immediately. And if there's 2 years of bans, we would just bank stuff away to make sure that if it's a 13-year term instead of a 15, we can do that too.
Now the telephone pole, these Verizon poles or Eversource poles?
They're both.
Both, okay.
They're technically jointly owned, although there are poles that aren't, excuse me. But they sort of have their own territories. If you go up north and in other areas, Verizon sets the poles. It's horrible when Verizon does. Verizon's way more expensive. We are direct competitors of Verizon. So they have no incentive to help us and every incentive to make it worse. Eversource has actually been very good to work with. And it's much easier when we're Downtown is more Eversource than Verizon, not all, but more, and that does make a difference.
The the grants, part of this would be paid for by grant funding, and I guess how reliable are the grants? How many years would they go out? That type of thing.
The grants, the two big ones, we do have some ARPA money left.
Mhm.
The other large grant is called the GAP Networks Grant, and that's about no, I'm sorry, the combined total is about 1.2 million. The GAP grant is about $750,000 in total. We have $270,000 set aside for Make Ready in that grant, because Make Ready has become it's more expensive than the actual equipment now. And the other one is a smaller grant of about 550. There's less set aside for Make Ready in that grant because it's really only one pole. And that is to outfit the Weldon. And most of the money for that it's very difficult in old cement buildings when there are no chases, there's no way to get between floors. You literally chip it out of rock and fix it. We have found some ceiling areas we can go through, but we have to dig a trench. We have to, and we would have outside people do this. We push a conduit underneath High Street to the building. We go down into the basement. We put our machinery there. Actually, we're doing two places, our switches, everything we do. And then we literally tunnel all the way through and up, and we take drills and go through concrete floors. And we work with the owners of the building. We own it because we are not allowed as a public company to spend money to increase the value of a private business's location. So that's one reason why we end up paying to do it. And it will get done and it will work great, but it's just a messy, expensive business. Usually I say that old buildings like the Weldon are 20 to 30 times more expensive per unit than if you're just going to a house or a duplex or something like that.
So when you go to the Wilsons while they're,
Yes, we do. That's not our grant, but we are contracted, we're subcontractors for that grant. So yes, we will connect the two different buildings. In fact, we were just talking with Amy, and they're still trying to figure out where they're coming into the building, which really makes a big difference to us. So we've been saying, please come in this side, because then we can run across and connect the two buildings, but we'll put in conduit between the buildings. We'll put what we call patch panels in the basement, because if you have, like, for example, in the Weldon, there are 105 units. You have to bring in, several higher capacity lines to the basement, and then you run them into switches, which takes and breaks up the signal, and then you run it up to each individual apartment. And in a place like Wilson's, it'd be the same, because I think that's really kind of an exciting project.
Be a little bit easier because we got it, right?
And there are chases. So the
Okay.
expense to do that is so much less. Chases are literally just like a 4-inch pipe that goes up behind walls. And it makes everybody's life so much easier.
And were you thinking of using grants for the debt service on this, or just debt service out of operating?
For which
For the 450 that you're requesting?
we would service the debt out of operating.
Out of operating, okay,
Mhm.
all right, sorry, I misunderstood.
That's what I'm got to do there. Absolutely. I sent it to Aaron, but it wasn't until a couple of days ago. So I will make sure that each of you get a copy of that. What that shows is that our actual debt service this year, for this fiscal year, is 520, I can't remember what the exact number is, $521,975, which we will do and still be able to grow retained earnings. Next year, it drops to $375,000, which is $123,600 less. So if we take anywhere from 40 to 50% of that as a new bond. We would still have a 50 or 60, we would still literally have less over down,
Yeah.
right? And then every year after that, for 2 years, it drops over $12,000 a year. In 29, it drops 17 because there's another small bond that we just finished paying off then. And in 5 years, before we add anything in, our debt service will be almost $180,000 a year less than it is now. So that sort of sweet spot where we've gotten big enough, and the initial, the $5 million bond that was originally taken will have hit the point where, like all bonds, it steps down in longer years. Those lines cross and we will be quite profitable. And then we can address the things we want to address, which is how to set a price and leave it for years, how to address working with certain qualifying populations and figuring out a way to help them to do what we need to do to convince owners of big buildings who are not very friendly to us coming in, that we could afford to come in and do the work that would make somebody like the Mill House stop telling us to go take a flying leap, which they do regularly, and go back and allow us to come in because we would build out and own the network inside. So we're at a point now where if we can get this taken care of, it really opens up the future tremendously for us.
So when are you gonna do things like condos, like Countryside?
Yeah, my boys live in the countryside, I know. So I've worked with the board at Countryside. We've actually, believe it or not, are doing some little stuff like looking to see, they have conduit that they own, but we're fishing to see if it's crushed or if it's still good. If they own the conduit, it's much easier for us. Unfortunately, in a lot of developments, the developers said to Comcast or Verizon, come, you put conduits in, they won't let us use it, which I totally understand. So, but where it is owned, it's much easier. And where it isn't, then we're also developing our abilities to lay our own conduit or direct bury in certain places and get to condos like that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
What percentage of your budget is your bond payments?
This year, it is just under, I would say that I would round it to 23% and round it up. It had last year, when you take the extra payments for the retirement, plus last year was the highest level because we had 3 bonds that should have been 15-year bonds that got put in as 3-year. That was like 570,000 plus. That, Ginny, was up over 25%, which is way too high. Next year, we would get, if we get this bond, it would drop to somewhere in between 19 and 20%. And then obviously, if we got a bond in the future, it would go up, but bonds that we would ask for wouldn't normally be this large. And so our goal is to get it down to a more traditional, somewhere in between 15 and 20%. We do have goals in certain areas. For example, our overall payroll is going to be under 21%. And in fact, our payroll for next year is lower than our payroll was in fiscal year 20, because we've done a lot of automation. We're down to 7 people. That is as low as we can go. But we have the large expenses. We try to figure out where we feel we need to be, where a business generally should be in terms of what the percentages are versus sales. And there is no doubt that the bond payments were really out of whack. Some of that is you're a new business starting and you take a big bond to get going. So it is going to be higher, but we have to be working on a path to bring them down. If we were saying, well, that it's gonna go up and now it's gonna be an even higher percent, we'd be having a really different conversation. But we are able to fold this in because we are retiring enough debt, doing enough debt smoothing, that this is something we can handle. Any other questions? Okay. Can I ask a favor? When you're done, so you have my number, would you just text me? Because I have to come back and lock up
Oh, sure.
everything
Oh,
after.
yeah, yeah.
So just when you.
Sure. Okay, I'll get.
Much as I would love to, I've already spent 9 hours in office today. Yeah, if you just say, hey, we're finishing up, I'll
Okay, got
drive
it.
back down.
That's
Just walk out the door and leave it and I will come back.
Our front door is not locked either, so we have to.
Okay, so we'll have to go back and do that.
There's something wrong with the front door.
Oh, yeah,
I
we,
don't know where the key to that is either, so we can all be here locking up at the end.
yeah. I'll come help you lock up after we're done here. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
We're going next.
Next is,
I don't even know what the agenda is.
so next is, I think, PUDs, right?
Central maintenance, yeah.
Oh, okay. So are we essentially doing
Everybody's meetings.
everyone but DPW?
Yeah, this
Okay.
is. Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
Hello.
Welcome.
Schools.
Do you know Michael Joe?
No.
He's the facilities director.
It's nice to meet you.
I've seen him in a few meetings and around here and there.
And you know Steve Neverhouse,
Hey, how are you?
and you know the mayor,
Absolutely,
and you know Ann Childs.
yes.
It's Michael and I's first time, so please direct us on what you need from us.
Just tell us what you need.
Everything?
No, just-
All right.
On the lead with that. Would have to say, I'm gonna help you. I think that the elevator thing's all set, that's in the book for everybody, but I think that's pretty much paid for, the elevators.
The elevator is all set. The GHS boilers, I think we're gonna repurpose some of the high school
Angela
buildings,
is,
right, so
Yeah,
that will
okay.
be taken care of.
Right.
And then the two that we have on for FY '26, we have the continued ADA complaint at the Discovery School. It is from 2010. So they've been very patient with us for many, many years. The last two pieces to close out the ADA complaint is the moving of the nurse's office as well as an additional egress out the 4th grade wing, because that is not handicap accessible. So Mike had met with, and I'll let you tell the story with Mark Snow, and did a walkthrough, and we were hoping.
I met with him, but I didn't meet him there.
Yeah,
So we didn't do a walkthrough there, but I met with a contractor at Four Corner School. And on that one wing, there's a set of stairs to go outside. So if there was a fire or something in there where you couldn't go that way, somebody would actually have to carry somebody down that's handicapped or something like that. There's no way to go out except those stairs.
There's a couple there, right? So it's not a huge ramp, right?
no.
No, it's like 8 stairs going down. It's like a 4 foot, 5 foot
Okay.
grade difference. So there's 2 ways to do it. You either put a lift in there, you cut just half the stairs out, you put a lift in, so you have a lift, but now you're dealing with mechanical repairs and recertifications. Or one of the last classrooms, you could take out one of the windows and put in a doorway and do a ramp down to the area, which would be permanent. So,
This is out the north end, right? Like, that goes out to the really
The
decrepit
back
basketball
shed.
court?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's on that end. So we had those ideas and I brought them to Mark and asked him, hey, if I have a contractor come in and give some pricing on it, you take a look at it, what are your thoughts on it and stuff? And he says, I can't do any of that. He says it has to be either done with an engineer or architect, and they have to do all that. And when they do something and present it to me, then I just stamp it yes or no, if I think it's compliant to the building code.
So
So he wants them to do that. So, you know, there were some contractors that came in and gave a reasonable, just from the hip quote to do it, but none of that's gonna help us because we have to have an engineer architect look at it. Along with the nurses area, the doorway's not wide enough to get a wheelchair in. So you could cut that doorway out and then change the sink out to a handicap sink and make a few other changes in there. Or we have another room that's open and you can cut a hole in the wall to go into a bathroom, add a doorway into a bathroom, add a sink in the nurses area and stuff. So there's a few options, but one of those has to happen for the egress and one has to happen for the nurses area to be compliant.
So is the idea that, I mean, you can't, if you're going down the hallway towards the back of the building, you really couldn't blow out the right, because that goes out to a
Right.
wall, retaining wall. It's like
Correct.
3 feet high.
Yes.
So you'd be going out through the left,
Yes,
which goes to grass.
right.
Would there have to
And
be
if
a
you come-
pathway after that?
If you come down the grass little hill there,
Mhm.
if you went towards the old basketball court where that greenhouse is,
Mhm.
that is all asphalt out there, so you could land it out there.
Could you not, I don't know, just food for thought, still have that same rear egress, but instead of having stairs, make that a sloped concrete plane?
You couldn't because ahead, you're going, it's 4 or 5 foot difference and it's only like 10 feet
Oh, you
out.
only have 10 feet out.
So you'd need probably 30 or 40 feet
Right.
if you're gonna do
The
that.
1 foot.
Yeah. That would be the easiest if you could, because you could even build something if you had to instead of pouring all concrete, but
Right.
you just don't have the headroom there.
So we are projecting, at least for the architecture design process, 85,000, but, you know. And then as for the work itself, we're not sure.
And we don't have anything on that, do we?
I didn't see anything in there. No, I didn't see
All
anything.
we have is the boilers.
Well, you should have all of these
Well,
things.
I don't see.
Because
For capital,
I didn't bring my laptop, sorry.
So I have a
I sent them
question.
to Aaron, so,
I'm sorry.
and you.
Um,
so there was that and the fire alarm system. at
The
three
fire
middle
alarm
schools.
system. So on the nurses station, is there another adjacent, or is there any other room with a wide door, with a doorway that would?
There is, and there's an empty room, and I'll just say it's like half the size of this room. Yeah, and it's down one of the hallways going down towards the washroom area. And there is, but they're supposed to have that direct access to a bathroom. So we'd have to cut a hole in a concrete wall and put a door in so they could get into that bathroom. And then the nurse would need some sort of sink in her area to wash hands and stuff. So you'd have to put some counters in and a sink and stuff. So either place, there's a fair amount of work to do it.
So there's not another room with a sink in it, with a wider doorway?
Not with a sink, no.
No.
And then not with a direct access to a bathroom either. Because if a kid's sick and has to get into a bathroom and stuff.
They all have narrow doorways, huh? I haven't looked. see.
Well, there's not a lot of rooms with sinks in four corners. It's very limited with sinks.
That area is very tight by the office and the
Yeah.
nurse's office. That's.
There is the teacher's break room area that has a sink in it, that has a wide enough door to go in, but there's all the copiers are in there and it's set up. There's a lot of stuff in there, but there's potential there, but then you'd have to move all the teachers' break area and their area to somewhere else. And they're gonna want to sink in those accommodations because it's the break area, so you're gonna run into it no matter where you go.
And with redistricting, any additional space is actually gonna be used for 5th grade to return. So that's our other kind of twist in this whole plan. I can't get it on my phone, my apologies. You can borrow mine now. I copied them for us. And then I brought the fire panel one as well, and then the quote that we got for the fire panel, and there's just some questions about what kind of system we will have to replace and why. So I think Mike can talk more about that whole.
So the panel itself,
That
though,
whole area.
30 years old, and the display on it, you can't hardly read it. All the circuit boards in there and stuff like that, they can't get the circuit boards anymore, so if they've been putting Band-Aids on them, and if they do end up like shorting out or going out, we're not gonna have a system in the school. It's that old and it hasn't been updated. So with fire alarm systems and stuff, you can change the main panel, but when you change the main panel, you gotta upgrade your end devices too. So depending on the state, they may, I shouldn't use the word force, but highly suggest that you use enunciating speakers instead of just horns. Like right now, you get a fire alarm, you hear the horn just go away. Now they have it where it says fire, fire, and they announce what the emergency is, and then horns go off. So if you have to change all that out, you have to run a new wire to every single device. So you're pulling wires through the entire school, every single room of the school. That's where the price could go above what they were talking. If we take and replace the panel and then all the end devices, and we don't have to go to the enunciation one, that's what the price would be to do it. But this also, there is some things that could be compatible that we could reuse, but they can't do that until they actually get into looking at the entire system and spending a day or two in the entire system to evaluate anything that's reusable and stuff. So, and they're not going to do that for free. So we have to wait on doing that till we move forward with something like this.
What school is this?
Greenfield Middle School.
Oh, middle school.
So you're talking 3 stories, 130,000 square feet. It's a big building. There's a lot of rooms.
You didn't redo the fire panel when they did the school over?
You know. Yeah, it's,
Of course they did.
yeah, everything in there's,
Of course, why would you not? Yeah,
It was working at the time.
yeah, I see that.
I'm getting you need a new elementary school.
and of course, the style they're using, they're not even making that style anymore. So it's
What do you guys
Really?
have over there?
Simplex.
Yeah.
And they're
That's what I
really,
was gonna guess.
Simplex is kind of, they're not even making certain systems anymore. It's
Yeah.
a lot of different brands.
So do you guys already have a design for this? Did you have to pay for a design up front, or is this including design as well, or you're not?
This
I'm
is
forgetting
not,
the school threshold, is it?
this is not a design. This was just the current company we use to support our system, Fire Equipment Engineering. They came in and I said, give me a ballpark, what it would cost to replace our system. And they were like, this is what we can give you, but we can't, we're not designing it now. We can't tell you everything, but the hour we're spending with you will give you a ballpark for budgetary reasons. And that's what it was for, is budgetary reasons.
And I know it's different with the schools, and I'm forgetting the limits right now, but this would, if it's only 300, you don't have to go out to bid unless you have what, over 300 and over.
I think it's over
30,
300. I think it used to be
over
250, and I think it's over 300 now.
Yeah.
And this could be on the cusp.
Right.
This would probably be a bid unless you have a state contract vendor.
Right.
They are on the state contract list, but
Okay.
it still may have to go out to bid. But unfortunately, with fire alarm systems, there's, we don't have a lot of say in it. It's what the state and these companies put together. You can get several quotes, and there's several ways to do it. Fire Equipment Incorporated told me a lot of times if it goes out to bid, an electrical contractor comes in and they actually bid it, and then they buy the stuff from Fire Equipment. And so now Fire Equipment gets it, they hire an electric company as a sub and have them do it. So at the end of the day, a lot of times it's cheaper to go with the electrical contractor, and then they get the stuff from these guys. So it's kind of weird how they do it. So if you do go out to bid, sometimes it does save you the money when that happens. So you don't have to go directly through the fire company.
You said that the circuit boards were no longer available for replacement. Have we had to replace circuit boards in there in the past? And if so, how frequently?
They have Well, I've been on board here for just over a year, so I can't speak, I can go off what people were saying before that, but there was a few instances where the LED screen was completely, you couldn't read it, so they had to take some of the boards out and send them to a company and have them work on them and repair them, and it's better, but it's not perfect, and that's when they were saying, hey, if this happens again or goes out completely, we can't do anything more with this. We were having some issues where it was having issues calling out to the city when the alarms actually went off, but that's been resolved, but, you know, it's an old system, so any of that stuff could happen. It's been working, luckily we do 5 fire drills a year. It's been working good recently. But in the past, it's not called to the city, and luckily we have also stuff where we have somebody in the front office call 911 as soon as the fire alarm goes off, so they get it either way. But it's, you know,
Is this like an analog dialer? Is it a cell dialer?
it's a cell dialer.
It's a cell dialer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's all new, because that was on the fire department side, so we got 2 new boxes. So once the signal actually comes out of the fire alarm panel and goes into the caller, that goes directly to the fire department, and it goes off cell service. And that's working fine.
And so you don't need the boilers then?
We do need the repairs, but we are repurposing some of the GHS construction funds that still remain in the capital account.
And so we don't have to worry about that?
Yeah, it's a very short lifespan for the boilers, huh? Didn't quite make it.
Well, we're not replacing the whole boiler, and what we're doing is we're doing the burner assemblies. And what happens is when you go to these super high efficient boilers, materials they're using are thinner metals and things like that, so it'd be higher efficient. And the boiler that you used to use in a school that size would fit in this room barely. It's that big, it'd be this whole room. Now they're half the size of this table, and they're just all compact. So when there's something goes wrong, they do like the whole burner assembly, and just the assembly itself is $14,000. So, and they recommend doing it every 8 to 10 years, and they're 8 years old.
That's true.
And we've already done one of them.
I didn't think that needed to go through this committee at this point, because there's money left from the Greenfield High School building fund, and it was left, so we made a decision. We've met on this a few times, and you know, 2 out of the 3 boilers aren't optimal, so I think repurposing for that, we're just gonna put that order through council, because it was already, money was voted on initially, so you've been doing that this quite a long time. That sounds okay, doesn't it, Jean, to you? Yeah, that's what I thought.
My other question when I saw this come up on here was, and again, I work with procurement a lot, but I know schools are an exception to a lot of the rules. Using capital funds for maintenance is not normally permitted. Is that an exception for the school? I mean, we're not, because we crossed it off, but I'm just asking the
Right.
question, because that would be more of a maintenance thing, not a replacement of the boiler. So in not school, you typically can't use the funding for replacement, or sorry, repair.
Right.
That has to come out of an operating budget.
There's a couple factors on that. One is the cost of it, what percentage of the boiler replacement cost would be. And then also on how much of it you're actually doing, like, you know, so size and dollar figures factor on that too. I mean, I can't say that I wanna, you know, change this pump and change this valve
Right.
and load it all up. I got 15 items and I wanna do these repairs and do it under capital.
Right.
If it's like, you know, 1 unit and it's a sizable amount, I think once it crosses a dollar figure, you can.
That makes sense.
It does.
It's also a good week to have your heating system's all working.
Yeah. I spent a third of my time this week just
Yeah.
tweaking valves, doing things and stuff like that. So it's been a busy week, but
Yeah.
The winter.
Yeah, but the summer's fun too.
Yeah.
Cooling is not a requirement as much as heating is, so it's a
Well,
little less stressful.
I have no more questions. Does anybody else?
No, I'm again glad to hear that elevators are taken care of.
Well, both of them?
one of them works absolutely fine now.
Oh, okay.
This is just to take the other one, because the original price was $1.2 million to replace the 2 of them. So we've gone down a good path this is to strip all the electrical out of that one elevator, so it's not an old relay system, it's all gonna be PLCs, computerized, all of the new standards and stuff, so basically the only thing that's gonna be left of that elevator is the shaft, the pump, and the cab, and it's gonna get reskinned and all that too, so everything's gonna look brand new, all the buttons are new, doors are new, all the electronics are new, so
Wow.
it's gonna be worth 30 years of service for
We'll give you
sure.
a tour for the first ride.
Yeah, first ride, yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'd rather do the second one.
Thank
Very
you.
Well done, good job.
Thank you for coming.
Good to see you.
Guys,
The
we
rest
send
of the
the
night
checks
goes
over,
quick.
right?
Who do you need next?
I think next is Pugs.
Yeah,
I think next is
you're up,
Pugs.
Joe.
Different, the first year's broken out, right?
This is Central.
Now aren't you glad you
Yeah.
answered the call?
So he needs a truck.
Okay, Central Maintenance.
Good evening,
Hi,
folks.
he's had a
Hey,
busy
Joe.
week.
Yeah, indeed.
You all know Pugs.
I think most of us have met at one point or another
In,
at this point.
in Child's Gene.
I'm Joe Pugs, Joe Pugilis, but Pugs is fine. I'm the Director of Central Maintenance. How we doing? All right, well, I'm gonna make this short and sweet, as short and sweet as possible. So, I'm here to advocate for Central Maintenance for $90,000. It is for, what we refer to as a Rockport work van. A Rockport work van. I have a printout here with a bunch of photos if anybody wants to go through them and see what they look like. Essentially, it's the van, a nose van, and then the entire rear portion of the van has been converted into essentially a mobile shop on wheels. This gives us the ability as a department to stay on site rather than returning repeatedly back to our own shop facility where we have larger tools that are a little too cumbersome for us to move around. It also gives us a logistical benefit of being able to leave it stationed in certain areas like the police department and other areas like schools. We can't leave our tools and equipment overnight. And yet oftentimes there are projects that go days, if not weeks, in these buildings. And so to be able to leave the vehicle staged there with all the necessary tools and equipment would again be a huge benefit as far as efficiency, and overall performance for the team. Over the last few years, we've seen a dramatic uptick in non-trade craft related projects. So my electricians are, I'd love to say they're a jack of all trades. They do framing, woodwork, countertops, doorways. They're singularly responsible right now for the bulk of the overhaul of dispatch at the police department. And I took their thoughts and opinions into consideration more so than anything when it was time to ask for a capital investment. And this is very much their desire. And I'm here to support and push for that, I guess.
So this is a used truck,
This would be new.
okay, because it says used shop truck.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have left that in there as a placeholder at some point. I'm not certain this is my most recent version of this document. I apologize.
And
No,
that could have been on, that could have been on our part because we.
I
were
think I left two
We
different
to-
copies in
new
the
to
shared
Excel,
drive.
so we were trying to get things, all put
That's my
together, so-
bad. I might have left two different versions of the budget on the shared drive. But no, my intention would be for it to be new. And then I have built into that cost, the cost of outfitting it with tools. I wouldn't want to take anything out of my shop or anything like that we already have. I would want to outfit that truck entirely on its own. And so I've built the tools and equipment necessary into that cost.
So just out of curiosity, because I'm seeing two conflicting kind of things, is this the only request now? Have
Yes.
the IT server and the feasibility study been?
That was an error on my part. I left it on there as a placeholder to remind myself I needed that for something. And again, I think it was just an error on my part in having two versions of the same document on the shared drive.
Mhm.
Apologize.
That
Yeah,
happens all
that's
the time.
not a capital request at
Okay.
all. And I understand that it doesn't fall within the guidelines of capital request.
And
So the 8,500 and the 87,500.
yeah, you have another one for 87.5, I think. Is that you?
That's the feasibility study, yeah.
That's not me.
Okay.
This is an error, a placeholder. It's definitely not, within the confines of a capital request. Yeah, it's under the $10,000 threshold,
And
even for in-house.
so this municipal building feasibility
I
study.
thought that was, we didn't actually know where to put that, so I think you're putting that under central.
And is
maintenance.
that what we're talking about, to have somebody come in from Boston or somewhere?
Look at the buildings for reuse purposes, which we were all up at Green River School today, taking a look at that.
And
So this is not a request, or is it just in the wrong place?
No, it is a request. It is a request. It would be something that you would need to vote on, and if we can't find another place to put it, I'll speak on it, but we can do it together.
I mean,
About
and I
Hudson.
have a narrative, if you'd like it. I have been working on a narrative
Okay.
for an overall condition assessment for
Right.
buildings for the city, and
So,
I'm happy to
yeah,
pass
so
it.
I'm just gonna say a little bit, because they're not gonna meet again. They're gonna meet tonight and then one other night with Marlo. So we've had excruciating problems with City Hall, which I have to say, Hugs and plumbing, electrical have been unbelievable working on, but we were looking at what are we gonna do with folks at City Hall and other employees of the city. So that's a big part of why that number is in here.
well, as you know, we've been
Yes,
pushing for that on
I know.
planning and construction,
Right.
so.
We also got just wind this week that 114 Main Street is for sale. We're not going up yet to the Green River. We looked at Green River School today. And just with many, many department heads, the overall feeling about being out of the center of town, even though we own that, was not a good idea. And this, I'm just speaking from what the folks said, that the cost would be astronomical to fit that for city buildings, but that was.
It's always best to have a new building that's built for the purpose that it's used for.
So-
Look at the police department. I
Right,
mean,
right.
that's we can make it work,
Right,
but you can't.
right.
Yeah.
So that's the purpose of the funding in there, to look at what actually we should do, but go ahead, you can say anything that you want to on that.
No, please.
Yeah.
I mean,
We're already pushing for it, so don't.
no, that's all right. Yeah, as far as Green River goes, I mean, I share a sentiment with the mayor that, the building has good bones. It's a wonderful building, and it's a lot of square footage. I mean, I would hate to see it not find a way to serve the city, and whether it's, passing it along to somebody and having those resources to build a new building somewhere, or to potentially repurpose it for something. In either case, I would be remiss if we didn't do something. And as far as town hall is concerned, as we said, I think there was a shared sentiment around many of us department heads, that the optics more so than anything, that the idea that town hall is not at the center of your city is something that can be frictional. A lot of people want town hall in a centrally located area, and it is a registered building as far as the historical registry goes. I don't think we're ever going to step away from that building entirely. I think that the city of Greenfield will, in some way, shape, or form, always have representation in that building. I
Well,
just
we
think
better get heating if we're going to keep it.
it's the heat, I can tell you right now, I can speak to the heating and cooling system. Those towers that are out back are 2 years out of date for their serviceable life.
Right.
Well, look at that. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we actually just talking about that, I thought we found plans for massive building in the back of it, but I actually can't imagine it in that location.
I would say it needs to be sold for housing or something.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
something,
that be something?
It'd be
something,
like a
Wouldn't that be
beautiful
something?
housing
right?
project.
Wouldn't that be something?
So,
And it's such an issue here, especially in the city.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, we have 2,000 unhoused right now. You know, and that's a real challenge. That's 10% of our population. We need to take that, and it's not gonna get smaller, unfortunately, as population growth goes, so too does the disenfranchised.
mhm.
I agree that I mean, as much as I'd like to see a building that already exists that, and thinking of like changing over a school to municipal offices seems kind of easy in the way that they're already cordoned off into sections. But yeah, the availability for folks to go to City Hall is huge, and being out there, you're taking away the walkability to
Right.
it. And yeah, and even just the optics of where you want, you want it somewhere in the center of your city.
How about where the fire station used to be? The
I believe
temporary-
that's a library.
No, I'm talking about the last time it was somewhere.
Oh, the temporary fire station back?
Those
No, no,
parking
no,
lots.
oh, that.
Oh, on
we
Hope
do
Street.
on Hope Street.
I think.
I
that
think
should
this
be-
is where the feasibility study that you
That's
were
a,
talking
that's,
about. comes
that is
into
also
play.
another thought we own. We do own that parking lot.
I think that it should be a police station and city hall complex behind the other courthouse. If I were, Coming
That
in.
I know you're the first person that said that. That's a very interesting thought. I love the
Jim
part
Breeze had the partner.
when we already know, when we already own it, which is why we went to look at the Green River School, because we already own that.
but I think that building specific, I mean, it's like talking about these schools that don't now fit purposes, like the doors aren't big enough. If we had one elementary school that the state paid for half of it in 20 years and quit having to put all this money, just keep putting Band-Aids till we could do it.
Right.
But I think we desperately need a police station. We desperately need a city hall, and they might both be able to go on that lot, which is why we need a study to.
The yard building, the DPW yard on Wells Street is another.
It actually, I would think the priority is going to be City Hall and the DPW yard. But I have seen many municipalities where they combined. In
Public
Deerfield,
Works and services.
they combined, police with, City Hall in Deerfield. I don't know. It kind of works.
Like a
Sometimes it
public
works out.
safety complex.
So we'll see.
you know, similar to
Anyways.
that. Yeah, the cost benefit analysis is really critical. I mean,
Yeah.
understanding what we call a useful life study, how long a building is serviceable and maintainable before it crosses a threshold of, well, you can either gut it and overhaul it and extend its life, or you can take it down to grade and build a brand new building and buy yourself 100 years.
Well, when we worked on the library and using
Yeah,
that
food drive.
building, it was going to cost like twice as much and require 3 times as much staff
Mm,
to make it into a building that could be used as a library.
mm,
And so, using old things is nice,
mhm.
and you shouldn't just tear them down haphazardly, but it costs a lot to do.
Absolutely. And we have to be stewards of the taxpayers'
Right.
dollar, right? To borrow your
Right.
phrase from earlier today, we have to be.
Spend the money like it's your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So owning that, I'm gonna think about how big that space is, how big that lot, I mean,
Well, again, that's why we.
yeah, I
do
know,
studies.
great, so, very good, thank you, that's great, very
Thank
good.
you very much.
No problem at all. If you folks have any other questions about the van or anything like that, is there anything else I can help you with?
I don't need any.
No.
Okay, I think Todd's out there chomping at the bit.
Tell whoever's next to come in, I don't have the order in front of me, so whoever next is up.
Thank you very much. Have a pleasant evening.
And so who is Todd?
Chief Dodge and Chief Dodge and followed by I forget if Christie was.
Let's not make her.
Christie was last. I moved it around last year. She was, well, this time we did it with, if you had one thing to present, you went first. If you had two things, you went second. If you had like four things, that's why we gave Marlo a whole night. All right. Next.
Oh, that is, I'm not sure I didn't ask that. I saw the request, but. So that chart's weird.
Weren't the veterans on there, but didn't we approve that?
Well, it's weird because it shows the total for FY 26 is 42, but the 42,000 request is until next year.
We were busy working on the police station.
Ginny, do you know that answer? So on this chart, it shows the veterans for their vehicle.
So
It shows the total for FY 26, but it shows the request is for 27. Do we know, is that next year?
Yes, we
Okay.
definitely, we took a look at that. That's put off till at least next year.
Okay.
I'm ready to listen to you.
Oh, good.
Do you know everybody here?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. Some friendly faces. And Mike.
I can say, don't insult me like that. Call me friendly.
So it's my first capital presentation, so I apologize for the newness and lack of knowledge on it, really how to go about it. So you want me to just get right into it, and we're talking about just next fiscal year? Right now?
Just next
Okay.
fiscal year.
All right, so as most are aware, we had gone a very long time without replacing our patrol vehicles. So our patrol vehicles are essentially an officer's office. It has everything they need in there. Computers to run information, to enter reports, radar for speeders and traffic, GPS so we know where they are, medical kits with defibrillators, which will come in later too. But it is their office. It has everything required for them to get to you when you need help. They are now, we just took delivery of 2, but we have 12 patrol cars. They are, with the exception of those 2, over 5 years old. So unlike a daily commuter vehicle that any of us would own, they are driven 24/7, 3 shifts a day. So if you take a 3-year-old car that you own, that's a 9-year-old car for a police department. So although the miles may not be super high because we have a really small geographic area that they're patrolling, although they're driving 8 hours a day and then the next shift comes on and does the same, the hours of those cars are what is important. They sit, they do traffic enforcement. There's a lot of activity they do beyond just driving. But what you find is the seats are worn out, the knobs are worn out. We are inundating the DPW, who, as you know, is skeleton crew in their shop. Our cars, we have several cars that just have to keep going back and forth. Ultimately, it's cost prohibitive. Some of the things that we bring them to Ford of Greenfield or Ford of Northampton, but now these cars are all outside of warranty. So and again, we had replaced a couple transmissions. Thankfully, we got them in time. But these cars are beat up, and we need our officers to have safe cars so they can get to you. So my primary request is for the replacement or to add 3 cars. Right now, and historically, we would order our cars in a particular way. I don't know why this doesn't even show them. Oh, it is there. Okay. We have traditionally sort of tried to pinch pennies on our cruiser builds. For example, if we could save a transport cage from the car we're driving right now and bring it down to the supplier, it would save us a couple $1,000s here. If we could save the computer out of it, or the radar unit out of it, or the Wi-Fi stuff out of it, we would try to do that. What we're faced with today is that all the technology is different. The models have all changed. There is nothing in our current cars that will transfer now to a new car. we're also experiencing, because, and again, I'm not criticizing him whatsoever, but the retired deputy chief was in charge of these two cars. He did what we would normally do and try to save money. And they're going back to MHQ, who's our supplier, to do all the things that he tried to save money. Because nothing can retrofit. So they're going back for things like remote starts. They're going back for monitor installations, antenna installations. They need WatchGuard, which is our cruiser cameras, which is another feature in our cars that the city really wants us to have. That's a massive liability thing for us. Whenever we transport a prisoner, this camera system is integral in keeping us open and transparent. Okay, if an officer does something wrong, we find it instantaneously. They're monitored regularly. So these camera systems are about $15,000. So, and again, technology being what it is, that stuff in the current cars is not going to work in the new car. So now a $65,000 car, I'm asking for about 90,000 a piece. Because what that takes into account is the computer, all the stuff that we need, medical kits, the radios are about $15,000. And we'll get into that as well. There's nothing cheap. The costs of things today are far more expensive than they were even 5 years ago. So a car today, the goal would be we pull the trigger on the purchase of a new car. They're about $65,000 to $70,000. They're upfitted at that place so that when we take delivery, we have IT come, they program our computers to work for us. We put our decals on it and we're off and running. That's the goal. It's a little bit more than that, but that's the short way of saying that. I think if we were to cycle our cars as we used to, we will ultimately get back to a point where we probably can retrofit some of those things. But right now our cars are so old, we have to start from scratch. Everything that we buy has to be to that model year. I'm also dealing with right now, we're working on our first electric vehicle. Carol Collins and I are working on it. She has some grant money. I'm excited about it. I'm actually want to see this thing happen. We're working on a Lightning. I want to create what we call the road safety unit. What that is, it's not a traffic enforcement unit. It's not an accident investigation unit. It's a road safety unit, which means this truck will be outfitted with all things to shut down roads. Or, hate to say it, but we had an individual pass away on the side of Federal Street in full view of people. We have what we ordered several years back was scene screens. They're 8 foot tall and they close these things down so that people driving by don't have to see what they shouldn't have to see. All this stuff will be in that truck. I want to create a road safety unit, whereas one person on each shift will basically take ownership of that truck. And when an event like that takes place, a microburst is times we'll get 40 streets we got to shut down. DPW ultimately comes in, but it generally takes them a couple hours. It's not a criticism. That's just how they're set up. We're already rolling. We need to start putting police tape across streets. We need to drop stanchions across streets. We have, we bought some a while back. We have half a dozen of those that kind of open and close, 6-footers, reflective, road close signs. All this stuff will be outfitted in that Lightning, which is an F-150 pickup. But it'll also have a transport cage. So it'll be a fully operational car for police purposes. It'll have a computer, it'll have a radar, have all that stuff. That's the next vehicle I'm hoping to work with Carol on. That's going to require that we set up a dual charging station. We're hoping, we've been talking about this quite a bit, probably on the street side of our PD, up to the top, come off a pole maybe, and then start our electric stuff on the street side. And we're not trenching across the parking lot. It's a lot cheaper, a lot less expensive. So, but again, that's another project. Cars. That's where I'm at right now.
I just want to say something that I had never thought of before you, that he said, just like their office, they're in there, like, is it like 80% of the time or 85% of the time, people from the time that they come in, other than the roll call, the people are on the street?
If we're going to do anything, any call requires us to go to them. We need to get to them safely. Now, there are many, many different things, and certainly policing is evolving every day, but there are other things we like to do, but even then, it requires a car to get there. So even if we want to show up and hand out car seats, we get there via a car. So this electric vehicle, I'm excited about for more purposes than just a patrol car. But getting back to the point is, our cruisers are over 5 years old. They are beat up and they need a replacement. If we're gonna keep the community safe, we have to get to you. If you're in crisis, we need to get to you. And these cars, the dash lights on these cars are all over the place. I get every day, the brakes are bad, the charging system's bad. We personally, we share this with many, the hybrids were a tough thing. Some of you guys have heard about the hybrid vehicles, but they did not work well for police cars. We went through a generation of those. The suppliers actually stopped even supplying them. I think they put the cart before the horse a little bit. The technology really wasn't where it needed to be. I think they're starting to come back online. I think they made some changes that they need to make. Didn't work well for police vehicles. There's so much electrical draw in a police vehicle. It just couldn't sustain it. So, I mean, we still have them. My car is a hybrid and I have no problem with it, but I don't have all the upfitting stuff. I don't even notice it. It's an admin car. So I think for purposes of you're adding massive amounts of draw with a laptop and with a cradle point Wi-Fi system, radios, you got, like I said, the radar units, WatchGuard recording systems. That's a lot of stress you're putting on the charging system. They just didn't really keep up very well. So I don't particularly, I'm not particularly concerned about what type we get. What I do know is we need new reliable cars so that we can get out and help people.
Well, I'm wondering if a car only lasts for 3 years, which, for talking purposes, why aren't we leasing them? Because why do we want to long-term finance something that'll be dead in 3 years?
And again, that's been a topic of conversation. This is new to me. What we're trying to do is we need to quickly get our fleet back. So the way I see it is we need to utilize every means possible, any funding source possible to get us there. Like if we could throw a few right now and then talk about leasing additionally, like I'm actually putting them at this point right now, they're in my budget too for next fiscal year. I mean, we need 10 more cars. These 10 cars of our 12-car patrol fleet are over 5 years old and in need of replacement. So any way I can, I'm trying to replace them.
Well, my question would be, can't we set it up so that there's a constant rotation of police cars and they're gone in 3 years and replaced? I mean, isn't that what we need
It's
to
how we
do?
used to do it.
I know, that's what
Generally how police departments.
and that's what
Yeah.
we used to do.
Rotation.
And they used to come out of operating too, right? So it's-
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
But we fell so far behind.
We
on
fell so far
replacement.
behind,
Yeah.
fell so far
Chief, are there
behind.
instances where you have patrolmen ready to go out and they just don't have a car?
It's getting to that point sometimes. There are incidents where we have to double them up, which it's not the most efficient way of doing what we're trying to do. We've tried every method. What we learned is an officer in a car gets so much more work done for the city than putting 2 in 1. We're a salary heavy department. So if you can split your resources up that way, you buy the car once, but then your officers can go in 2 different directions, handle 2 different things.
Right.
Greenfield, we handle over 40,000 calls a year. They're rolling, they're moving around. And that's not BS. We handle over 40,000 calls a year. They're rolling in and out of that place constantly, all day long, 24/7.
Well, have you checked into what it would cost to lease a car for 3 years?
It's the same. So I think previously what we would do is you essentially, if you do a 3-year lease on a car, you pay a car each year. So in that respect, you'd say 90,000 this year, 90,000 next year, 90,000 the third year. The problem is that compounds. Because then you're off with the next phase of 3 cars, right? So then next year you have 2 cars.
But if we did 3 leased cars this year.
Yep.
in next year? I mean, that would get you what you need faster, wouldn't it?
If we did 3 leased and 3 on capital, I'd be happier. We need 10. To do it.
They did the renovations themselves. This past said, kept saying, "Can you repurpose what we didn't use for the cars, because we really don't need the station, it's what we need is the vehicle." So I think, yeah.
I'm
No,
saying,
I'm
let's
saying-
work to figure out a way to make.
so
it
I
happen.
don't know that we, after 3 years, that you, maybe do some of those cars go on to be used by, like the dog cars, the canine cars?
Well, so that's a good conversation. Canine cars we don't have to worry about them so much on a 3-year cycle. They're assigned to individual officers, so they're not doing the 24/7 3-shift routine. So we don't have to worry about that. The problem, if we decided they were just gonna lease 3 a year, you're gonna get to a point where, so say you lease 3 this year. Now, those 5+-year-old cars next year are gonna be 6 years old, then 7 years old. By the time we're done, we have close to a decade-old cars that are never gonna make it that long. So I guess the challenge is, how do we get to a point of replacing these 5+-year-old cars relatively quickly so that, yes, then we can start getting on this rotation? So I'm looking
But
for
I'm-
funding every way possible.
I'm thinking you don't have to buy new cars to replace. You can lease new cars to replace the old cars.
Yeah, you can, however, because they haven't done a lot for the past few years, there needs to be a big
Oh,
capital influx.
I know, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying, what
Yeah.
can we do and how
Yeah.
do we do?
So,
it?
you know, we laugh, but he's absolutely right. You need to capital plus a leasing program in order to bring it up
Okay,
to, yeah.
Well, you're the numbers guy,
Yeah.
so.
So, you know, you could do like 3 cars would cost you 30,000 each a year, so $90,000 in a leasing program, and then you could do another 250, 270 for 3
Well,
additional.
here we've got 280 for 3 cars.
Mhm.
Well, so if we leased 6 cars, I
Mhm.
mean,
But I don't think you can use capital for a lease, right?
No, you can't use capital, so we'd have to add
So it'd have to be-
90,000 to his
The
regular
lease would have
budget.
to come out of
but
operating.
that, I know,
Yeah.
but you can give him the money to do
Exactly.
it.
Yeah, that'd be
I
like
mean,
a
I'm-
$300,000.
I'm
Request.
saying here,
Mhm.
if you could get 6 cars instead of 3
Mhm.
this time
Yeah.
by leasing. And then next year you could get 3 more,
Mhm.
you know, then we've got a
That,
cycle.
that is absolutely, that would put us where we need to be. But so what that says is that's 270,000 I have to ask in the budget this year.
Mhm.
Right.
And then you have to, then again, ask for that $270,000 plus another 90,000.
270 in capital, 90,000 in the budget, and then an additional 90,000 next year.
Right, but she's saying to get away from capital altogether,
Oh,
to swing
gotcha.
it to the budget.
Okay,
The first year of the lease would be 270 for 9, or for 6, sorry, right?
Yeah.
Is that what we said, 6? 6 times 30 is 180.
Yeah.
So you're asking for 180 this year, which would be your first year lease
Mm-hmm.
payment on 6. Next year, to add 3 more, you're adding another 90.
Yes.
So now it's 270. And that would carry forward, and it would compound if you continue to add leases.
yeah, which,
You're gonna get to a point where you're spending about $300,000 in a police budget. That's gonna be the request every year, I think. Does that make sense?
yeah, that's about, yeah.
But
300,000.
that's what you've got here, and
Mhm.
so I'm just saying, why don't we now get 6 cars instead of?
I'd love it.
Right, well, that would be, because this is.
I don't have
mean,
any
this
budget
isn't-
to do it right.
Right, this is an ask for borrowing.
Right.
So it's not even coming out of the capital fund, this would be an ask for borrowing, so
Yeah.
versus coming out of our general fund.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
let's play with the numbers and
Yeah.
make it happen, so he gets 6 cars instead of 3 for 280.
Yeah. I did-
I'm not concerned on how. It's just, like I said, my main message is we need cars desperately, desperately.
I mean,
Because I do understand what you're
Yeah.
saying.
I think for the purposes of this, I think it's a great path forward. And then with the need, we may have to bite the bullet on these 3 and just buy them this time. And then hope that these next 3 years of $300,000 requests, we don't need to do. We'd be able to, Like you said, if you have money set aside right now, you could lease 3.
I don't have, that's,
You don't
I
have it.
don't have any.
You don't have it. Okay, I thought you were
Because
saying. you
in
had
this
some.
year,
That's a buy. If you had to lease 3 cars on top of 3, if we were to purchase 3, would that be something you could absorb the first year lease of 3 cars in your operating?
right now,
Yes.
no.
Okay.
We have 0 for cars.
When we were doing the leasing program, it was, I remember in the operating budget, it was like 55,000 per year.
Yeah, but it didn't
Once.
work because it didn't keep going. You know,
Well, I know
we dropped the ball is what I'm saying. And
Mhm.
so now we've got to,
Yeah, also, and I would just say this, we have to actually look into that more because we did not look into it because there was a question about whether or not that was fiscally the most responsible way to go, and I didn't do the numbers on that. I think
well,
it
I'm
might be-
just saying that paying for something over a long term that lasts for 3 years does not seem like a smart thing to me to do.
I agree.
Yeah, that has been the conversation.
Right. And I don't want you to not have cars because
Yeah,
it's
no,
not smart.
I-
This would not be borrowing, this would not be borrowing, it would be capital,
This is from capital?
this would be for capital.
Okay, so this is
It's
different.
not- I mean, it'd be from capital stabilization, it wouldn't be, we wouldn't borrow.
Well, I'm just looking at the chart. It says B. All right, so you
So
want
we
cap,
could-
so this
so
would be
we
out of
could-
capital.
So we could do 6 cars out of capital. Or you can only buy cars out of capital.
Only
We
buy
would
out
buy
of capital.
capital.
The good part about buying once, and I get that there's behind the scene you're paying, but the good part about buying is, and if you want to transfer it then from there into the departmental budget is that's not seen again.
Got it.
And then, if you put 6 into a capital thing right now, then we just start with the 3-a-year request. And again, that's either 90 or 270. You either buy them, which is probably the best bet, or you get into that lease thing, but again, the lease compounds. So if I put in there $270,000 for 3 cars, the city buys them, you don't know a thing on them anymore.
And so next year.
Then
could
you do
have
it
in your
again, and you do
budget-
it-
You could have in your budget to lease them.
The reality is we might have a great year or two. Because if we were to put 6 on capital right now and 3's approved in next year's budget, plus the 2 we just got, we got 11 cars. I mean, we're gonna be in pretty good shape. So if they're just bought, what you're gonna find is, like I said, my FY 26 budget request has, I think I put 2 cars in it, but it could be changed to 3 to get us closer to where we're trying to be. I hated putting 2 in there because it changes the number so dramatically and it looks bad. But again, I know the biggest thing we need to do is get our fleet back. And then it's gonna be more manageable for us. As long as we all agree, it is a priority. The cars are everything to a police officer. We have them. Police aren't going anywhere, like them or love them or hate them, but it's a thing the city owns. They have to be able to do their jobs. The car is the thing that makes them do their job. Everywhere they go, an accident scene, they need it. And that's another, like the lights itself are probably $4,000 now, put those blue lights on. Everything is just astronomical these days. So it's a $90,000 to $100,000 venture to buy a police car with the stuff you need in it. So it's a big ask, and I get that. But I'm desperate to try to get the fleet back to a functional level. I'll use any means possible to get there.
So I'm seeing the next 4. Again, I feel like some of this info has changed since maybe this was printed. Because even some of the requests, initially, like this one says 300 grand, on here it says 280, 170. So it's like,
Things
and again,
get
it said borrowing, then it was capital. It's important to know also, obviously for us too, just like we had last year, we need an accurate, for not just this department, for every department, on where these are coming from. So if the previous requests were wrong, I think we need to check into that.
Yeah, so the
So-
person that was doing that was new to the
Yeah.
Excel sheets, and
Sure.
I don't think there's one thing where it says the source. I didn't even look at that, I just looked at the number.
Yeah, there's the
So if you
chart.
could go back and
Okay,
work on
I'm
it for next time.
The
You know
sad
what?
part too is,
Well, we can send you another chart with where the funding source is gonna be. That, I don't know that,
You
the
don't know.
person that did that part knew what the numbers, knew what the letters even stood
We're
for.
meeting again on Tuesday. so
Yes, that
we
would be
don't- you don't
good.
Need to send us anything. We'll
I
just
get
pick
it.
up on
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Okay, sounds good.
Because we're depending on Steve to work out all the magic numbers that can tell us how it's gonna work.
Okay.
Again, this is, understand, this is a weakness for me. I don't know much about
Sure.
any of this stuff,
I know
so,
that's his job.
yeah. I do have a
Steve
spreadsheet.
didn't have anything to do with it.
This is a write-up from our supplier. Again, yes, there was a horrible. And it seems like I can ask for the exact same thing and I get a different price every time you ask. This most recent one came up to, you can see the total on a car upfitted is 93,389.80. That it really sadly doesn't even include everything. We'll still have to put odds and ends into it, but we get a relatively complete package. It's about as turnkey as we can get that they supply. So we'd have to still mark it up. We have to do it in detail.
I would say this is a problem that Steve is going to work out and tell us how we can handle it to get you the most cars as
Yeah.
quickly as possible.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
it's a numbers game. you know,
Yeah, right. And I do understand the compounding and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, no, I get it, yeah.
So
You'll have a very happy police department if you can, if this happens and they can actually not have to drive to DPW to get something fixed every 5 minutes.
and don't forget, we're working on your new police station too, so.
That doesn't drive us to a call though.
No.
I would say a car is more important right now than a building. We're doing our thing. I love that you're thinking of us, but you know, right now we gotta get there.
So what else, did you have anything else to speak on? Did you have on
Yeah,
your
so the
list?
second one is there's a couple insignificancies here that I'm assuming probably won't pass muster, but one thing that we're trying to do is we're kind of all over the place with respect to our evidence recording, so to speak. So when I say evidence recording, that's everything we do. Okay. As you know, we have body cameras. And I would never, and neither would any of our officers recommend ever going backwards. Body cameras are an absolute necessity for policing today. It started out, people demanded we have them, and now people demand we get rid of them because they're realizing, you know, people aren't necessarily always doing the right thing, right? But what it absolutely does is it keeps your officers in check. There's no question about it. They know they're being watched. They're very good about turning them on. We watch this diligently, but we have cameras in the cruisers. The cruiser cameras obviously look out. I'll give you an example of when this worked to the community's benefit was a now retired lieutenant got into an accident at Silver and Federal Street. Everybody immediately started to blame the other car. We went into the cruiser cam and saw that the lieutenant ran a red light. That would have been an injustice for the other driver because they would have been dragged through the mud. We dealt with our issue. Okay, that's kind of an extreme, but it was true. Everybody, and even the lieutenant didn't realize he did that. So he's going to fight tooth and nail. I didn't do that. You could see clear as a bell in the cruiser cam. He ran a red light. Okay, that's one example of many. We've been able to quality assure work. We can go into the camera system. It keeps track of metadata such as speed, when lights are engaged, brakes are engaged. It's called WatchGuard, and there's a lot of really good data that keeps us in check. That's one system. It's called WatchGuard. We then have a different system in our booking room. So, which is you need these recorded because really weird and bad things happen in booking rooms. Or bad accusations at the very least are made when you're in the booking room. We are currently recording it all. It's a different system. Our station cameras, another system altogether, very antiquated. Gene and I upgraded the hard drive on this system that he had to go into the archives to find where to get a hard drive for this thing. So station cameras are one, but then we also have body cameras, and body cameras is once again an entirely different company. We have WatchGuard to access to, I don't even know the company on the other things. So what we want to do is we want to do a one-stop shop vendor software for body cams and our cruiser camera systems, at the very least. And like I said, we use our cruiser camera system, the WatchGuard system, as our booking cameras. They're actually little cruiser cam systems that's actually set up inside. And so Chris Green actually put together that quote for that. It's a massive packet here. I'd share any of this with you guys at any point, but there's two phases of that. Ultimately, to upgrade all our body cameras to the same technology and software, as well as our cruiser cameras, to all the same technology and software. I'll give you some benefits of it is new technology, because ours is already old. We've had them for about 5 years. It's old. It's Galaxy. Nobody even uses the company we have. They work good, but they don't do everything we should do. If an officer walks up to another group of officers whose body cameras are on, it automatically kicks on. If an officer gets thrown prone, it senses that, it kicks their body camera. If an officer takes his firearm out of his holster, it triggers the body camera. If you turn the lights on, this is why the cruiser cameras need to line up with our body cameras, because when you have the same system, every time you turn your lights on, it automatically turns your body camera. What I explained to many was, and these are the officers I'm talking about, right now they have an option to put a holster sensor in. And I told them, you want to do that. Because if you're ever going to get called on the carpet for not turning your body camera on, it's when you pull your gun out. But that's also the least likely time you're going to remember to turn your body camera on. So you may want it to be an auto trigger. Again, it's a union issue, but for me, I want to know my camera's on if I pull my firearm out, because that better be recorded. It's just a big deal, so.
And so doing this would not trigger a union issue.
No, we already have all these underway. What we're trying to do is upgrade the technology. And that's not a 3-year issue, right? In fact, most of these will do a 5-year contract. So there's a lot of extra work we'll have to do. I think once we lock in on a vendor and a system, we're probably gonna run with that for a long time. It's starting to come down. I mean, you had a bunch of smaller companies coming together. So I wrote a grant for our current body camera, so we didn't pay a cent. I got like $90,000 through the feds. And this one particular company, the company's Galaxy, the cameras are Axis, AXIS cameras. We were the first in Massachusetts to jump on board with them. Many have jumped on board with them now, but they lack some of the things we need to do this kind of consolidated package. The bigger companies like WatchGuard or Axon, you can get everything through that. So I venture, if we go this route, you're going to see the name WatchGuard, which is a Motorola-owned company. Everybody knows Motorola's huge. Or Axon. They're the two big ones who can. The technology is amazing, and the upgrades are generally part of your contract. So you're not going to go back to the drawing board. Most of them are in 2 years. You can replace your camera. I mean, any camera, whatever one's gone, they'll upgrade you. So, but we need to get the initial infrastructure in place, which would require upgrades on all the cars that we're getting in the station cameras and on all the body cameras.
This one says borrowing as well. Is this not?
Yeah, I didn't know
This is
about
capital
that.
too.
Didn't know what to put on that. Capital. I didn't change any of those. I don't think I can change those.
No, that was, I can't tell you how many times that was done. And Erin did them, and she did it about 20 times. And kept trying to get the stuff together to come in. I was just looking at the numbers.
I could only put stuff in here where it's
So,
white. I could make changes.
And so we will go over what the actual funding source is. There's not, I would just say this too, there's not money in all of the requests for everything. There's not enough for this. So there will be picking and choosing
yeah.
out of these.
And
So I actually asked department heads to prioritize your 1, 2, 3, 4 of the things that you're asking for, because we can't do everything. Because there's not enough money there.
So my third is radios. Currently they can be from 10 portables, about 5,000-6,000 a piece, to mobiles are about 12,000 to 15,000 a piece. We were hoping to buy some of those to have portables when we hire, we have a part-timer. We don't have any portables to issue them. The portables are the ones that you see they carry on, right? And a mobile is the one that goes in the car. We don't have any inventory. So John Pachurik had wrote the grant, which got us to the whole, like, every one of us got a new one, but we don't have any extra. And we don't have in the budget for that, and they're expensive. So that was my number 3, was to get some inventory of radios. Just get them on the shelf so that as we circulate through with new officers, et cetera, or one goes down, we have the backup. We need the radios. We did just upgrade the actual radio infrastructure in Greenfield, which is used by police, fire, everybody. And that was a $280,000 capital project done by Motorola. Pittsfield Communication did it. We have the most cutting edge, state-of-the-art radio system in our communication center now that you can possibly get. It's great. Now our communication across agency is much easier, and in some cases now possible where it wasn't before. So state police, they don't like you getting on theirs. Well, we can get them now. So that was my number 3. And then the last one, and again, those will last a long time. That's not something we would ask for again. Radios last until we change radios. Usually all you gotta do is replace a battery. And then the last one is replacement defibrillators. Jason Haskins, Lieutenant Haskins, is in charge of our medical CPR training, things of that nature. And we come to realize we put a defib in each cruiser. And they have I personally have resuscitated 3 people with defibrillators. I mean, it's an important thing to have. Ours are very, very, very old, like first generation defibrillators. I did print something up to get a good Zoll and get them on the cars, about $22 to $2,400 a piece. It'd be nice to have those in the cars. And again, having said that, as you can see, we keep them a long time. That's not something we're going to be looking to replace in 3 years. They sit in a car, we keep them in a nice case. And when, someone's having cardiac arrest, they come out, and they're used, and then we replace the stuff. We work with, our medical teams. They'll replace our stuff for us. We interchange that kind of stuff. Yep. Lower priority, but, still important for us to have.
And listening to all the coverage on the fires in Los Angeles, you begin to see all the stuff that we
I feel
don't
sorry
have.
for them. That's just bad. We have them, so rest assured we have them. We have defibs in the cars. What we just did is while we're taking inventory stuff, we realized, wow, these are old. These are really, really old. We don't want to show up. Happened before. You never want to be that person who shows up on the scene and you just don't have the right tools to try to help. Family's looking over you. They're looking to you to help. And if you go to fire up your defibrillator and it doesn't work, you don't live that down really fast. I'm not even talking from other people. You don't let yourself live that down because you wish that thing fired up. That's the 4. Cool. I can go on that spreadsheet and see if I can change those, but I don't.
No, we'll do that.
Okay.
We'll go through, because we'll go through. Don't worry about that. That's on me. I know.
A little bit of upside down, topsy turvy stuff down there. So I'll give you a pass.
Got a little busy. Yep. All right, well, thank you.
You got it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it. It's exciting learning all these new steps.
You did good.
Reach out to you. I need to know what these boxes should say. We'll talk.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can tell you later. So these for borrowing, and Steve and I had just been talking about that, but our hope was not to be borrowing for
That'd be great.
much at all, because we're actually kind of maxed out on the borrowing, so we're putting money in capital stabilization. That's why it's like picking and choosing.
Well, I mean, yeah,
Like, what?
you always pick and choose.
Yeah, like, what do you think?
Are you
Hey.
last? The last is best.
I tried.
Christie, I gotta give Christie a hint for next year. If she puts one thing on, she gets to go first.
You never have one thing though.
Right, thank you, Christie.
Yes. I told Todd that I'm gonna make sure that Pugs knows that he took a lot longer, because he gave Pugs a hard time. So, thanks for having me here. Recreation capital requests, I think you guys have copies of we always have pretty pictures.
You do, yes. My favorite.
So we put in 4 requests, but we meet with the mayor earlier today, and she asked me to, if it's okay that I share this, Mayor, to withdraw the bathrooms. We're gonna delay that a little bit longer.
Oh, the precast walls?
Yeah, yeah.
And yes, I was getting feedback that, that was my idea, that perhaps that wasn't the best idea. That I was getting from different department heads, there were problems with some of it with access to water, like Green River Park, where I really wanted a bathroom, was gonna, I don't really quite understand, it was gonna be uphill, and it was gonna cost a lot more than I would have thought.
Mayor, I did get quotes from our
Yeah.
engineering division, but yeah, there's 2. That one in the
Eh.
energy park, by how the land is, we would have to pump it up. So that's what she's referring to. I do think that the bathrooms have been in our capital even before you asked me to move them forward, because it is a health and safety issue in our parks. People, use the the woods, a flower bed, anything that they feel like they can have. Well, some people don't even care about privacy anymore, but to be out of sight. And we are a small little city, but we have a lot of people that need restrooms.
Right, yeah.
I used to pee in the woods.
So with that, I just want to say, because I asked you, it's a necessity, and it's also a problem, no matter which way you think of it. First I talked with Christie, and then talking with health and safety. There are concerns about, whether we would have people living there, and I don't know what the right answer is, but we're pulling that for now till more things are sorted out. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our number 1 priority is the Rocky Mountain Ridge Trail project. As you guys know, that's undergoing right now. We finished the mapping. We've nailed down, there's about 8 pieces of property that we need to work with the landowners to try and figure out how to get access. Hopefully we do it either by easement, or if we need to purchase them, we're gonna have to figure out and negotiate that with them. I did meet with the land trust, and they've given us some templates to work with. They didn't have time to really invest to help us, so Kelly and I need to now adjust those letters and then approach the landowners. So that's where we are with that project. And then, so the request of the 75 is so that we can then purchase and get all the trail markers, the kiosks and that kind of stuff in place. The trail system is heavily used, as you guys know, and we continually get phone calls for maps, and even phone calls when people are lost. They call us to try, and the police and the fire go out and try and find them. So that's what that 75 is. That's our first priority. The second one that we have in was for the repair with the courts. We have 1 pickleball court that needs to be repainted. That was built in 2017. And then the Davis Street courts, which the high school uses, has significant cracks and stuff. And so when I got estimates to do those 2 repairs, it was $35,000. Again, this was something I met with the mayor about. And between operating and school, she's hopeful that we can find money for that. I just know that we need to get it fixed because of safety concerns. Those courts at Davis Street, we built in, I think it was 2009, when Larry Petrin was here. He was our engineer at the time. He and I worked together to do these courts. And then the final is the pickleball court construction. and we have pretty much finished our design on the pickleball courts. We just went through last month with Conservation Commission, and they approved our design for the 6-court complex at Abercrombie. As you know, pickleball is in high demand in well across the country, but really in Greenfield. And the 1 court that we have does not meet the needs of pickleballers. And so the 250 request is to go in conjunction with some of the money that we have already gotten. We've also requested 50,000 with CPC that's going through the process right now, so that we can then apply for a park grant. Park grants is a 70-30 match, so we need to come up with our match, kind of like we've done in the past with the skate park, as well as the dog park. Dog park had multiple grants, and so that's the number that we need. The total cost of the project is going to be around 800,000. It'll be close to $1 million if we do lights, which the pickleballers had asked for, so that would just kind of be like an add alternate. So the breakdown would be the 250 for the park grant, match from capital, CPC, the 50,000, and then the pickleballer group. There's a group that are working with us fundraising. I've asked them to fundraise minimum 25,000, and they're at about 11 and change right now. So they are working on that, which we'll all put in together to fund the project. Similar to the dog park, we had a Paws Park group that fundraised, and as well as the skate park. I don't think I've ever had a project that I get all the funding for at once to start to finish a project. Someday maybe that will happen, but we have to sort of piecemeal all of our projects together to make them work. Trying to think. I don't think you want to hear anything about the rest of the years. You just want to talk about this year, right? So I don't know if anybody has questions, but I try to be thorough in the documentation that you receive. And I promise I won't talk as long as the other people.
You know,
Simple.
maybe that's what we should do next year.
Put her first.
Well, put people on who speak quickly.
Yeah.
I thought
let's
it
do
was a
it
good
that
idea.
way. So I would say her, then schools.
They didn't talk very long at all.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Hugs is last.
He's a chatty guy.
Okay, sorry, we're taking your
We have a
time.
star pickleballer
That's
who's
okay.
gonna be on the cover of Men's Health next.
Happy.
Mhm.
Is Happy really making it?
Yeah, right. We're getting nationwide attention for this. It was
Are
in-
you doing pickleball now?
I haven't had time.
We have
I-
pickleball.
I know, I asked to talk to him today. And yeah, he was like interviewed or something, and where was that?
He went to Washington.
Yeah, Washington, and he's gonna be on the cover of Men's Health. His partner's an 83-year-old fellow, and fascinating.
So that's it. We're finished, huh?
Mhm.
Yeah, unless you have questions for me. How's that?
I say pickleball, we know.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Trail
pretty
keepers
straightforward.
on that
Yeah,
forever.
yeah. Yep. Ryan at the Fur Clog, has walked all those trails, so many miles he's put in for us with that project. Okay, well,
Yeah,
Well, how often do people get lost on the trails and call for help?
frequently, I mean, obviously, you know, dispatch would be able to run the numbers, but it's like people, when we get snow, like people get disoriented, and then people forget like where they park. It's really amazes me that. You know,
I was lost in there when I first. I kept wondering, it was out at 2 hours, and I found out there were 50 miles in there. And I got with a friend, well, why don't we go this way, which I never do things like that. And I thought I printed out my trail map and never left again without it. It was like, yeah.
Gotta get a drone or something.
Be like, follow me.
Yeah. Yeah,
Thank you.
But yeah, all right. If you're going with me, then I'm gonna disappear.
yes.
Did you have something else there?
No, I didn't. That's great. Thank you so much.
I have one question.
Oh, yeah.
Grant, you're talking about, you said it was 70-30. Are we the
Yeah.
30?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
You the 30?
I was just making sure, because, so that's why you're looking for like the 300,000 mark.
Yeah.
Total is they'd cover the other 7.
Yeah, so the good news is that the other 2 park grants, we've received the max, which is the 400,000. But it's been a couple years since I've applied, and now it's 500,000,
Oh,
so I'm hoping that we'll get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, through city council, we'll have to go through for the vote to, you have to authorize the full amount for each of these
Oh, I
programs.
remember that.
Yeah.
You have to remind me of that.
And then we'll have to have the language, in perpetuity that the park will remain, for Parks and Recreation,
Mhm.
all the whereases.
Yeah, the whereas, you know, I love this.
Yeah, yep.
Lot more coming, I heard.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much. If you have any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, have a good night.
You too.